Well, I made the hut. It took me 3 hours, 15 minutes. So if I kept on going a bit faster, I would have made it under 3 hours. But I'll be back down the bottom in about 2 hours. So where I am is I'm in the hut. One of the bros told me before I left this morning that there was going to be a cyclone up here, and I managed to make the hut. It's not easy to see, but there it is. There's the front coming in. You literally see the sheer face of the weather front, and across there I can see just about to Tongariro or Waiopehu. So I'm soaking wet. I didn't get wet until I came out of the bush line into the subalpine. It's exactly what I hoped it would be. Horrible. It wasn't too bad in the bush line. There wasn't too much distraction from any past winds. The track's been refurbished with new boardwalks. Makes it a very nice, easier, more pleasant. However, when you put boardwalks in, it takes away some of that texture, I guess, if you like. You know, the moving through the morass and getting up to your ankles, knees, in the mud. Now this peak here is called Waiopehu, and it's the reason why it's been called Waiopehu is a tūpuna, Muaupoko, Ngai Tara, lived down the bottom on the flats, and this elevation here is about 1,200 metres above sea level, ASL, and way out there in the distance you can see the section of the Taranaki Bight into the lower Tasman that washes up against our west coast line in the Horowhenua. I can see the Manawatu meandering and weaving, and where it escapes out into the Raukawakawa, e Manawatu Te Awa. And you can see from here, Waiopehu, that it weaves all the way back, comes towards Shannon, and I can see imagine where Shannon just about is, and then it advances behind the hills towards Papioia, and then beyond back into the Wairarapa. So I love being up here. But getting back to the story of Pehu, this whole mountain ridgeline, it's called Pehu after a series of children came up here to undertake a task. They had to find some routes, some pathways through the mountain line. The kids were sent on the mission. There was a decent contingency of them. They had sufficient supplies to be able to make this journey up here, and you can imagine this is midsummer and it's already blustery, so these kids got up here, and what they didn't know was up here is that there are tarns, and most very deep. They are big cracks in the Earth's crust, and they can go down for a very long time. Now I'm about 1,400 metres above sea level. You can see the flats of the Horowhenua Plains that eases out into the Tasman, Raukawakawa, and from there it just eases out again on a very gentle slope for another 2.5 km until it reaches the Tasman Trench that takes all the southern oceans up to Tonga and to the other Pacific islands. So Pehu was up here, sorry, not Pehu, the children were up here and they're mucking around in some tarns. And in these tarns, some very old and ancient eels had made their way up these hills, and they do make their ways back up to very old waterways and these mountains, because of the elevation and proximity to the ocean, precipitates the moisture very quickly. So the pools of water that gather on the flats, on the terraces, eventually finds their ways into the cracks, and then they just, over time, just wears the mountain down. In these cracks, on really high peak times where the waterline's really high, tuna will inhabit these tarns. children will inhabit these towns, tuna will inhabit these towns and live there. And most of the time, the tuna will feed on the food resource that's around them: bugs, crustaceans, any dead matter plant life. They're quite a robust species. So these kids were mucking around and they come across a giant tuna in one of these towns, and one of the kids that had ventured down this town to get some water had come across this one tuna, and the tuna, because of its size, was an apex predator in this area, aside from humans, and had taken this child with a bite and dragged the child down into the town. Now, it's not clear if it was more than one child or just the one child, but the remaining children, those of those children that were able to get out and find their way back home, had relayed this story back onto around the lake, which is only about in a straight line 2.5 km, believe it or not, in a straight line, back around to the lake, and told the story back to the families back down there. And Pehu, being one of the chiefs very long ago in this area, had come up here to investigate the story that these children had made about this tuna. And it's got a name, and I'm not going to tell you the name because it's a name that belongs to our people. And he found the tuna. Well, you see, the story goes is that he found the tuna, and the tuna still had remains of a human down its tarn, or down in its tumu. And Pehu proceeded to put an end to that animal's life. But there was a deal, an arrangement that was made between him and this tuna. And this is that the tuna was a kaitiaki. Over time, the promises made to the kaitiaki, the protector of the environment, were broken. And that was that the people who lived down the bottom before Ngai Tara had promised to feed and look after the tuna, and in return this tuna would look after them. And the environment would then be left intact, if you like. So that agreement was broken. I guess it may have been broken over time with the change-outs with occupation, cultural assimilation, and this tuna said, well, okay, well, this must be my food package that's arrived, and proceeded to take care of business. And once Pehu had realised that there was a breach of an agreement of an original understanding, Pehu then made a promise to honour that, go back to that agreement, honour it, and our peoples have been coming back ever since to honour that agreement. But as a direct result of that agreement, Pehu had resolved to grieve over the loss of that child, and hence the name Wai, or water, or tears. So the word Wai before tia, Pehu, could easily mean that these are the tears out of grief because of the loss of a child through the tragic breach of a contract between a kaitiaki and the people who relied on the kaitiaki for protection. We could look at it that way. We can also look at it a way in which the distance between, as I said earlier, the mountains to the sea is very short. And so with an abrupt obtrusion coming out of the ground on the westerly wind, enables for a lot of moisture to precipitate on the hilltops. And then as a direct result of that, you've got a lot of moisture, rain, and the Tararuas are some of the wettest ranges on the North Island, and the only range on the lower North Island. And so arguably we could say that there is so much water here, which is what the word Wai is, that the mauri, or the spirit of the mountain, is always forever being cleansed. And water here in our culture is the major conduit to cleansing, like most other ancient cultures. And even today in our Western world that we live, we wash ourselves with water so that we're clean. So take that kōrero with you as you will. This is a kōrero that belongs to a people that have been here for a very long time, and that story is about 700 years old. And there are many stories like that around here, how our people's broken the land, Ngai Tara ki Muaupoko. And our assimilation to the Kaitaha peoples and the Katamāmoe peoples comes out through the change of physical change and the various attributes that just the Muaupoko peoples alone have amongst the tribe. But we're a good people. Anyway, engari, this is part of this self-help, I guess, that you need to put yourself on to gather yourself and just get yourself some direction. So that's that story. I made my peak. I don't know if I'm going to go to the very top. It's only another 10 minutes to the top. I made the hut, and I've got a 2-hour journey out, probably 2.5 hours at most to sprint out, and I'll be in the library and I'll be posting this in the next 3 hours. Kia ora.